The morning sun was barely up when he opened his eyes. The tiny room was quiet except for the faint hum of cars passing by outside. The old fan above his bed made a soft rattling sound, just like it did every morning. He lay there for a few seconds, staring at the cracked ceiling, trying to gather his thoughts. Today was supposed to be his big day, the day things could finally change. He had been waiting for this job interview for weeks. After sending out dozens of applications and getting no response, this was the first company that had called him back. It wasn't a dream job, but it was something steady, a position that could help him pay rent, buy proper meals, and maybe even send some money to his mother back home. He got up slowly, feeling the stiffness in his back from the thin mattress. The floor was cold under his feet. On a small wooden chair by the corner hung his only suit. It wasn't new. He had worn it to every interview he could afford to go to. The fabric was starting to fade at the elbows, but it was clean and pressed. He had ironed it the night before, making sure every crease looked neat. As he got dressed, he glanced at the small mirror nailed to the wall. His reflection looked tired but determined. He smiled faintly to himself. "You got this," he whispered. He checked the time, 7:15 a.m. The interview was at 9 a.m. downtown. The bus ride would take nearly an hour, and he didn't want to risk being late. He picked up his worn leather folder with copies of his resume, tucked it under his arm, and stepped outside. The street smelled of morning, a mix of car exhaust, fried dough from the food cart down the block, and the freshness of dew on the grass. He greeted the old lady who always sat by the corner with her baskets of fruit. "Good morning," he said, and she smiled back. He stopped at the small cafe near the bus stop and bought a cup of coffee with the few coins he had left. He couldn't afford breakfast, but the caffeine would help keep him focused. When the bus arrived, it was half full. He took a seat by the window and watched the city roll by. Rows of brick houses, corner shops opening up, kids in uniforms walking to school. He thought about how different things could be if he got this job. He wouldn't have to keep worrying about his landlord knocking on his door, or pretending he wasn't home when the rent was due. He closed his eyes for a moment and pictured himself in a nice office, wearing a proper shirt, sitting at a desk where people respected him. Maybe one day he could even save enough to go back to school. The thought made him smile again. The bus moved through traffic slowly, and he checked his watch every few minutes. He still had time. Everything was going smoothly. He would make it. About 20 minutes into the ride, the bus suddenly stopped near a junction. The driver announced there was some road work ahead, and that passengers would have to wait or walk to the next stop. He sighed, shaking his head. Of all days for this to happen, it had to be today. He decided to walk. It was only a few blocks to the next station. As he stepped off the bus, the sun had climbed higher, warming the air. He walked briskly, clutching his folder. Then, as he passed a quiet stretch of road lined with trees, he noticed a silver car parked awkwardly by the side. The hood was open and smoke rose gently from the engine. A young woman stood beside it, looking worried. She was on her phone, pacing back and forth, but it didn't seem like she was getting any help. He slowed down, glancing at her. He could see she was frustrated, maybe even scared. Her clothes looked expensive, and the car was clearly not cheap. Still, she seemed completely lost at that moment. He looked at his watch again. It was almost 8:10. If he kept going, he would make it on time. But if he stopped, he wasn't sure. He took a deep breath, trying to make a quick decision. He could hear his mother's voice in his head, reminding him of what she always used to say. "Son, never walk past someone who needs help. You don't know when you'll be the one standing there." That was enough. He stepped off the sidewalk and walked toward her. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Is everything all right?" She turned quickly, surprised. "Oh, no, not really. My car just stopped, and I think something's wrong with the engine. I've been calling for roadside help, but they said it'll take over an hour." He looked under the hood, careful not to touch anything hot. The problem was obvious. The tire was flat, and the engine had overheated. "You've got a flat tire too," he said. "I can help you change it if you have a spare." Her eyes lit up. "You can? That would be amazing. I don't really know how to do that." He nodded. "No problem. Just pop the trunk." She opened it, and he found the spare tire and tools. He took off his jacket, laid it on the ground, and got to work. The sun was beating down now, and sweat began to form on his forehead. Still, he worked quickly and carefully, loosening the bolts, replacing the tire, and checking everything twice. The woman stood nearby, watching quietly. "Thank you so much," she said. I was really starting to panic. He smiled without looking up. "It's all right. Happens to the best of us." When he was done, he closed the trunk and wiped his hands on a cloth he carried in his bag. She reached into her purse and pulled out some cash. "Please take this. I really appreciate what you did." He shook his head firmly. "No, thank you. Just glad I could help." "But you ruined your clothes," she insisted. "At least let me buy you a new shirt or something." He laughed softly. "Don't worry about it. I've got to get going anyway. Take care." He gave her a quick wave and started walking again. She watched him go, still holding the money in her hand. There was something humble about the way he walked, quiet, confident, and kind. She felt strangely touched by his gesture. He checked his watch again. 8:45, his heart sank. He was late. He broke into a jog, hoping he could still make it. But traffic was worse near downtown, and by the time he reached the building, it was already 9:20. He rushed inside, his shirt slightly wrinkled, his shoes dusty. "I'm here for the interview," he said breathlessly to the receptionist. She looked at him kindly but shook her head. "I'm sorry. The manager already started the last session. They said they can't take any more candidates today." He tried to explain, but she only smiled politely and said, "You can apply again next quarter." He thanked her and stepped back outside. The noise of the city filled his ears. Cars honking, people talking, the rush of life moving on without him. He found a bench nearby and sat down, his folder still in his hands. For a moment, he just stared at the ground. The disappointment hit him hard. He had done everything right. Got up early, prepared well, even walked part of the way to make sure he wasn't late. And still, it slipped away. He could feel the sting in his eyes, but he took a deep breath and blinked it away. "It's okay," he whispered to himself. "It's okay." He thought about the woman he had helped. Maybe she was already on her way somewhere important too. Maybe she'd make it because he stopped. That thought gave him a small bit of comfort. As he stood up to head home, the wind picked up, brushing against his face. He didn't know it yet, but that small act of kindness had just changed the course of his life. For now, though, all he could do was walk. The city around him was alive with sound and movement, but inside he felt quiet, a mix of disappointment and peace. He took one last look at the tall office building behind him and smiled faintly. "Next time," he said softly. Then he turned and began the long walk back, unaware that somewhere out there, someone was already looking for him, the very woman whose day he had saved. He woke up the next morning with a heavy feeling in his chest. The air in the small room felt different, almost still. The sunlight peeked weakly through the thin curtain, lighting up the dust in the air. For a few seconds, he forgot what had happened the day before. Then the memory rushed back, the flat tire, the woman, the missed interview. He sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed his eyes. The folder with his resumes was still lying on the chair where he had thrown it last night. He hadn't even bothered to eat dinner. All that walking, all that hope, only to end up with nothing again. He tried to shake off the feeling, but it stayed. He poured some water into a cup, took a sip, and stared out the window. Life had a strange way of testing him. Every time he got close to something good, something always seemed to pull it away. Still, deep inside, he couldn't regret stopping to help that woman. She had looked scared and lost, and leaving her there wouldn't have sat right with him. That thought was the only thing that made the disappointment a little easier to bear. He spent the next few days sending out more job applications. Every morning he would sit at the small table with his old laptop, typing slowly, fixing his cover letter again and again. Some days he'd hear back, but only to be told, "We've decided to move forward with another candidate." He tried not to let it break his spirit. He had been through worse. There were nights he had slept hungry, days he had walked miles just to save bus fare. He had learned to keep going no matter how hard it got. Still, that week felt heavier than most. On Friday, he went to the grocery store to buy a few essentials: bread, eggs, and instant noodles. As he stood in line, he counted his money twice to make sure he could afford it. The woman at the counter smiled politely as she scanned his items, and he smiled back weakly. When he got home, he made some noodles and sat on the bed, scrolling through his phone. There were no new emails about jobs, no new messages, just silence. Across the city, in a tall glass building, another day was unfolding very differently. The same woman he had helped was sitting in her office, looking out the window at the busy streets below. Her assistant had just handed her a stack of documents, but her mind wasn't on the papers. She was thinking about that morning, about the man who had stopped to help her when no one else would. She still remembered how calm he had been, how he had smiled and refused to take any money. Something about him had stayed in her mind ever since. She had told a few people in the office about it, and one of them had laughed and said, "You should have at least taken his name or number." She had smiled then, but now she wished she had. There was something about his kindness that had touched her deeply. Over the next few days, she couldn't shake the thought of finding him. She asked her driver to retrace the route they had taken that morning. Maybe he lived nearby, maybe someone had seen him. But no one knew who he was. She even asked her assistant to put up a small post on a local community board online, describing what had happened. "Looking for the man who helped a stranger fix her car last Tuesday morning near Oak Street," it read. "You changed a tire for free, refused any money, and left in a hurry. If you see this, please reach out." But the post got buried among hundreds of others. No one replied. Back in his small apartment, life went on quietly. He didn't know anyone was looking for him. His days all started to look the same. Wake up, search for jobs, go out to hand in resumes, come home tired. One evening he sat outside his building, watching the sun set behind the tall buildings in the distance. The light painted the sky in shades of orange and red. He thought about his mother again, about how she used to tell him, "Good things don't come easy, but they always come to those who keep doing right." He smiled softly at the memory. Maybe she was right. Maybe life just needed time to turn around. 2 days later, his phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. He hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello?" he said quietly. A woman's voice came through. "Hi, is this the person who applied for the administrative position at Brightworks Company last month?" "Yes, that's me," he said quickly, sitting up straighter. "Great," the voice replied. "Our HR department forwarded your application to another office. They'd like to meet you for an informal discussion tomorrow at 10 a.m., if you're available." He blinked, surprised. "Oh, yes, I'm available." "Thank you so much." "No problem," she said. "You'll receive the address by text. Please come prepared with your resume." When the call ended, he just sat there for a moment, stunned. It had been so long since he'd heard something positive. His heart raced a little as he smiled for the first time that week. That night, he ironed his suit again, polished his shoes, and checked his folder. He even practiced answering questions in front of the mirror. He wanted to make sure he didn't miss another chance. The next morning, he left early. The air felt lighter, like the city was somehow cheering him on. He took the same bus he had taken the day he missed his interview. This time, everything seemed to go smoothly. When he arrived at the address, he looked up at the tall building in front of him. It was modern and beautiful, with glass doors and a polished marble lobby. He double-checked the message on his phone. It was definitely the right place. At the reception, he gave his name, and the woman at the desk smiled. "You're expected. Please take the elevator to the 10th floor." He nodded politely and stepped inside. His palms were sweaty, but he tried to stay calm. The elevator dinged softly when it reached the top floor. As he stepped out, he noticed how quiet it was up there. The walls were white, decorated with framed photos of employees and achievements. A tall woman in a neat black suit met him at the hallway. "You must be our guest," she said warmly. "Please come this way." She led him to a large office with floor-to-ceiling windows. The sunlight filled the room, and behind a wide desk sat someone he instantly recognized. It was her, the same woman from the roadside. For a moment, he just stood there, unsure what to say. She smiled as she got up. "I thought I'd never see you again," she said softly. He blinked, completely confused. You're the one with the car?" She nodded, smiling. "Yes, I've been trying to find you for days." He looked around, still trying to understand what was happening. I had no idea." She laughed gently. "I'm sorry if this feels strange. I didn't want to scare you off, so I asked our HR team to reach out to you. I wanted to talk to you personally." He still couldn't find the right words. "You work here?" She smiled again. "I don't just work here. I own the company." His eyes widened. He couldn't believe it. The The woman he had helped that morning, the one with the flat tire, was the CEO of this entire business. She walked around the desk and stood in front of him. "When you helped me that day, I was in a hurry to get to a meeting. I was late, I was frustrated, and you didn't have to stop. But you did. You got your clothes dirty and you still refused to take any money. That meant something to me." He looked down, embarrassed. "It was nothing, really. I just didn't want to see someone stranded like that." "It wasn't nothing," she said firmly. "People rarely do that anymore. You missed something important that day, didn't you?" He hesitated, then nodded. "An interview," she sighed softly. "I thought so. When I found out you were looking for work, I decided to bring you here myself. You deserve a chance." He stared at her, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to say." She smiled kindly. "Say yes to an opportunity. I can't promise everything right away, but I'd like you to start working with us. I believe in rewarding character as much as skill. You'll learn and I'll guide you." He stood there for a moment, speechless. He had imagined getting a job so many times, but never like this. Never in a story that felt so unreal. Finally he nodded, his voice trembling slightly. "Thank you. I won't let you down." She smiled again and extended her hand. "I know you won't." As he shook her hand, the sunlight from the window fell across both of them. For the first time in a long time, he felt like life had seen his kindness and returned it. The next morning felt like a dream. He woke up before his alarm, still unsure if everything that happened the previous day was even real. He sat on the edge of his bed, replaying the moment in his head. Her voice, her words, the way she had looked at him when she said she believed in him. He took a deep breath and smiled quietly. For the first time in a long while, he felt hope again. He got dressed carefully, wearing the same suit but with a fresh shirt. He polished his shoes until they shone. He wanted to look his best. Before leaving, he looked in the mirror and whispered to himself, "You're not the same man you were yesterday." The city was already busy when he stepped outside. Cars honked, people rushed to work, and the air smelled of coffee and morning rain. He felt lighter than usual, like the weight of all those hard days had lifted a little. When he arrived at the office building, the same receptionist from yesterday smiled and waved him in. "Welcome back," she said. He smiled back shyly. Upstairs, the atmosphere felt calm but professional. He followed the assistant who had met him before. She led him to a smaller office near the back, neatly arranged with a desk, a computer, and a window that looked out over the city. "This will be your workspace," she said warmly. "You'll be helping with reports and scheduling. Don't worry, someone will show you everything." He thanked her softly and sat down at the desk. For a moment he just looked around. The computer hummed quietly. The sunlight touched the papers on the table. He could hardly believe this space was his now. A man with glasses soon walked in. "Hey, you must be the new guy," he said with a friendly grin. "I'm your team lead. Let me show you how things work here." The rest of the morning passed quickly. He learned how to manage schedules, type reports, and sort client emails. It was a lot to take in, but he paid attention to every detail. He wanted to prove that he was worth the chance he'd been given. By lunchtime, he was exhausted but happy. He sat quietly in the cafeteria, eating a sandwich, watching other employees laugh and chat. He still felt a little out of place. Most of them wore fancy watches and talked about vacations or new phones. He didn't have stories like that to tell. Still, one of the younger workers sat across from him and started talking. "You're new here, right? Where'd you work before this?" He smiled politely. "Mostly part-time jobs." "Nothing big," the other man nodded. "Well, don't worry. Everyone starts somewhere. The boss seems to really like you. That's already a good sign." He looked down, hiding a small smile. He didn't know how to respond to that. Later in the afternoon, he was called into the CEO's office again. She greeted him with a smile. "How was your first day so far?" "It's good," he said. "A lot to learn, but I'm grateful." She nodded. "You'll do fine. I could tell from the moment we met that you're someone who takes things seriously." He hesitated for a second. "I still can't believe I'm here. I feel like I don't really deserve this." Her expression softened. "You deserve it more than you think. Talent is everywhere, but honesty and kindness are rare. That's what I look for." He smiled shyly and thanked her before leaving. As he walked back to his desk, her words echoed in his mind. Maybe, for once, someone actually saw him, not just as another job applicant, but as a person. Days turned into weeks. He got better at his tasks, and soon people around the office started to notice his effort. He stayed late some evenings, organizing files or helping others with their projects. Whenever someone dropped papers or looked stressed, he was the first to lend a hand. People began greeting him by name in the mornings. Some even asked him for help. Slowly, he became part of the team. Still, he never forgot where he came from. Every time he received his paycheck, he sent a little money to his mother and used the rest carefully. He didn't buy new clothes or fancy things. He was just grateful to have enough. One Friday afternoon, there was a small meeting in the conference room. The CEO was there, along with a few department heads. He had been asked to assist by preparing some documents. He quietly stood near the corner, ready to hand out files when needed. As the meeting began, he listened closely. They were discussing a new project proposal that would require careful planning. At one point, one of the managers asked a question that no one seemed to answer. He hesitated, but then spoke softly. Maybe if we adjust the schedule so the testing happens earlier, we can save time and reduce mistakes. The room went silent for a moment. Then the CEO turned to him. That's a good idea, she said, smiling. Please write that down. We'll include it. His face warmed and he nodded quickly. The others looked at him with surprise, some even nodding in agreement. It was the first time he had spoken up in a meeting, and his suggestion had been accepted. Afterward, one of the older employees clapped him on the back. Nice work. You've got a sharp mind, kid. He smiled, feeling a mix of pride and disbelief. It was such a small thing, but it meant everything to him. That night, when most people had gone home, he stayed behind for a while. The office was quiet, and the city lights shone through the window. He looked around and thought about how far he'd come. A few weeks ago, he was walking home after missing an interview, wondering if he'd ever get a chance. Now he was part of a company, doing real work, surrounded by people who respected him. He whispered to himself, I made it this far. I can go further. But not everything was smooth. There were still moments when he doubted himself. Some employees whispered about how quickly he'd been hired, wondering why the CEO seemed to take a special interest in him. He heard some of the talk, but he never responded. He just kept working quietly, believing that time would prove his worth. One afternoon, he overheard two people near the copier. You know he's only here because the boss likes him, right? One said. No one gets hired that fast. He paused for a moment, pretending not to hear. It hurt a little, but he reminded himself that he couldn't control what people thought. All he could do was show through his actions that he deserved to be there. The CEO, meanwhile, continued to watch his progress from a distance. She often saw him helping others or staying late without anyone asking. One evening, as she was leaving the office, she saw him in the hallway carrying a stack of boxes. Still here? She asked. He turned, smiling shyly. Just finishing up some things, she nodded. You remind me of myself when I started out, she said softly. I used to stay late too. It's how I learned everything. He looked surprised. You did? Oh yes, she said with a laugh. I didn't grow up rich, you know. I built this company from scratch. So when I see someone like you, I see myself, hungry to make something of my life. Her words hit him deeply. He hadn't expected her to say that. Thank you, he said quietly. That means a lot. She smiled and started walking toward the elevator. Keep doing what you're doing. People will talk, but results speak louder. After she left, he stood there for a moment, feeling stronger than before. Weeks went by, and the project he had contributed to was completed successfully. During a team meeting, the CEO publicly thanked everyone, and then turned to him. And to our newest team member, she said, Thank you for your smart ideas and hard work. It's rare to see someone so dedicated. The room broke into light applause. He felt his face grow warm again, but he smiled and nodded. That night, he called his mother. She picked up immediately. Son, how are you doing? She asked with her gentle voice. I'm doing good, Mom, he said, unable to hide the pride in his tone. Work is going really well. My boss appreciates what I do. That's my boy, she said, laughing softly. I always told you, the right heart always finds the right path. He laughed too, blinking back tears. You were right, Mom. You always are. When the call ended, he looked out the window of his apartment at the night sky. The city lights flickered like stars. For the first time in his life, he felt like he belonged somewhere. He still didn't have much. The same small room, the same old clothes. But inside, He felt rich in a way that money couldn't measure. He was learning, growing, becoming someone he could be proud of. He didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning. His kindness on that random morning was about to lead him to something far bigger than a steady job. It was going to open doors he never even dreamed existed. The weeks rolled into months, and life slowly began to change. He had gotten used to the rhythm of the office, the early mornings, the quiet hum of keyboards, the soft buzz of conversations, and the sound of printers running in the background. It all felt like a new world compared to where he had been before. He was no longer the quiet man sitting in the corner unsure of himself. He now handled reports confidently, spoke up during meetings, and people listened when he shared his thoughts. His name was known throughout the department, not because of favoritism, but because of the way he worked, humble, patient, and reliable. But even as things improved, he never let success get to his head. Every morning before leaving for work, he still whispered a short prayer, not asking for more, just thanking for what he already had. One day during a team review, the CEO walked into the meeting room unannounced. The staff straightened up immediately. Her presence always carried quiet authority, but she smiled in a way that made people feel at ease. "Don't mind me," she said softly. "I just wanted to see how everyone's doing." When her eyes met his, she gave a small nod. It was a simple gesture, but it said everything, a silent reminder of where this journey had begun. Later that day, she asked him to stop by her office. When he entered, she was standing by the window, looking out at the skyline. "Have a seat," she said. He sat down, wondering what this was about. "I've been watching your progress," she began, turning to face him. "You've grown a lot in a short time. Everyone here respects you." "That's not easy to earn," he smiled shyly. "Thank you. I just try to do my best." "That's exactly why I called you," she said. "We're starting a new community project. Something outside of the company's regular work, helping young people from low-income areas find jobs and training. I want you to lead it." His eyes widened. "Me?" She nodded. "Yes. You know what it feels like to struggle. You understand what it means to wait for a chance. You're the perfect person for it." For a moment, he couldn't speak. His heart was racing. Leading a project? That was something he never imagined for himself. I don't know if I'm ready," he said quietly. She smiled. "You weren't ready to change that tire either, but you did it anyway. Sometimes readiness comes after action, not before it." Those words stayed with him. Over the next few weeks, he worked tirelessly on the new project. He visited community centers, met with young people looking for jobs, and shared his own story with them. Many listened in disbelief, not because his story was magical, but because it was real. He told them how one act of kindness had changed everything. How helping a stranger, even when it cost him his own opportunity, had opened a door he never expected. His story spread. People from different areas started showing up at the company's workshops. Some came just to meet him. They called him the man who didn't walk away. The CEO watched quietly as the project grew. She never took credit for starting it. Instead, she gave him full ownership. "This is your work," she told him one afternoon. "You built this with heart." Sometimes, after long days, he would stay in the office alone, looking at the list of names of people who had found jobs through the program. Each name felt like a small victory, a reminder that he was passing on the same hope someone had once given him. But not everyone in the company was happy. A few higher-ups didn't like how quickly he was rising. They whispered things behind his back, that he didn't belong in management, that he was just lucky. He heard some of it. At first it hurt, but he remembered what the CEO had told him. Results speak louder. So he worked even harder. He let his actions do the talking. One morning, he was walking to work when his phone buzzed. It was a message from the CEO's assistant. "Please come to the conference room at 10 a.m. The board would like to meet you." His stomach tightened. A meeting with the board? That was serious. He spent the next hour trying to calm his nerves. When he walked into the room, the atmosphere was heavy. The board members sat around a long table, papers and laptops in front of them. The CEO sat at the head of the table. She smiled faintly as he entered. "Please have a seat," she said. He sat down, unsure what to expect. One of the board members spoke first. "We've been reviewing your project," the man said. "It's received a lot of attention. The community loves it, and the media started covering it too. That's impressive, another member nodded. We want to expand it nationally, but that means we'll need a strong leader to manage it full-time. He blinked, still not understanding. I can help however you need me to, he said. The CEO looked at him, her eyes warm. They're talking about you. They want you to lead the entire expansion. The room fell quiet. His mouth went dry. Me? He asked again, barely believing it. Yes, she said simply. You've proven that you can handle responsibility. You've shown empathy, leadership, and persistence. You didn't just create a project, you created change. For a long moment, he couldn't speak. He thought about all the days he had walked home with empty pockets, the nights he had gone to bed hungry, the times he had wanted to give up. And now here he was, being trusted with something so big it didn't even feel real. I'll do my best, he finally said, his voice quiet but steady. The CEO smiled proudly. That's all I need to hear. After the meeting, he walked out of the building in a daze. The city looked brighter that day, the sky clearer. He stopped for a moment on the sidewalk and took a deep breath. He realized that the moment he had stopped on that roadside months ago, when he chose to help instead of walking away, then was the real turning point of his life. That small act had rewritten his entire story. As the weeks passed, his new role began. He traveled to different cities, met with local leaders, and built partnerships. Everywhere he went, people were moved by his story. Some said it gave them hope. Others said it made them believe that kindness still existed in the world. He didn't think of himself as a hero. To him it was simple. Helping someone in need shouldn't be special. It should be normal. Still, one afternoon during an event, a young woman approached him with tears in her eyes. I saw your story online, she said. It made me stop and help someone the other day. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't. So thank you. He smiled softly, his heart full. Don't thank me, he said. You did the right thing. That's what matters. Back at the office, the CEO continued to watch his journey with quiet pride. One evening, she called him into her office again. You've come a long way, she said. I can see how people look at you now. You've become an inspiration. He looked down, shaking his head lightly. I never wanted to be anyone's inspiration. I just wanted a job. A chance, she smiled. And that's exactly why you became one. He chuckled softly. It still feels strange sometimes. Like all this happened to someone else. She looked at him seriously. You earned it. Every bit of it. Don't ever forget that. He nodded, her words sinking in deeply. As he left her office that night, he passed the same hallway where he had once stood, unsure of where he belonged. Now every person he passed greeted him warmly. Some nodded, others smiled. He realized he had become part of something bigger, a story of kindness, faith, and destiny. When he stepped outside, the air was cool. The city lights shimmered like stars scattered across the sky. He looked up and whispered, "Thank you." Not sure who he was thanking. Maybe life itself. Because somewhere deep inside, he knew the truth. Doing good had come back to him in ways he never could have imagined. And though his journey was far from over, one thing was certain. He would never again underestimate the power of a small act of kindness. It had changed his world once, and now through his work it was changing the world for others too. The air in the city had started to feel different lately. Maybe it was the change in weather, or maybe it was the way life seemed to be changing all around him. Each morning when he walked to work, he felt a quiet sense of peace. Not the kind that comes from having everything, but the kind that comes from knowing you've earned what you have. The program he led had now grown beyond anything he ever imagined. What started as a small idea had become a movement across the country. Thousands of people were being trained and placed in jobs. The company's name had become known for more than just its products. It was now recognized for giving hope. But he still remained the same, humble, soft-spoken, and grateful. He still took the same bus to work, greeted the security guard at the front gate, and stopped by the same small coffee stand across the street every morning. One chilly morning, as he was sipping his coffee, a young man approached him. "Sir, are you the one from the Carter Foundation?" He asked. He nodded. "Yes, that's me." The young man smiled shyly. "I just wanted to say thank you. Your program helped me get my first job. I was lost before that. I didn't believe anyone cared, but when I saw your story online, I thought maybe I should try." Hearing that, he felt a lump in his throat. "I'm glad it helped," he said quietly. "Keep going. Don't stop now. You never know who you might inspire next. Moments like that always reminded him why he did what he did. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about moments, seeing someone's eyes light up with hope again. Later that day, the CEO called him to her office. She was sitting behind her desk, a cup of tea in her hand, her expression calm and thoughtful. "I've got news," she said. "Good news," he smiled. "I like good news. The board has decided to promote you," she said. "You'll be moving into a senior management role, still leading the foundation but also helping direct the company's social projects." For a few seconds, he couldn't even react. That's a big responsibility," he said finally. She nodded. "It is, but you've earned it. You've shown what it means to lead with heart." He took a deep breath and smiled faintly. "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't even believe in myself." She shook her head gently. "You earned every bit of this. I just gave you a chance and you did the rest." The next few months passed quickly. He adjusted to his new role, learning to manage larger teams, make bigger decisions, and balance both the business side and the human side of things. Despite the long hours and pressure, he never forgot where he came from. On weekends, he would still visit the neighborhoods where he used to live. He talked to young people on street corners, sharing his journey with them. Some laughed in disbelief when he told them he once had nothing. But when they saw the humility in his eyes, they knew he was telling the truth. He didn't dress fancy or carry himself like a boss. He spoke to everyone the same way, kindly, with respect. He always said, "Success doesn't make you better than others. It just gives you more power to lift others up." As the foundation's work expanded, he was invited to speak at schools and events. One day, he was asked to share his story at a national conference about leadership and change. He stood on stage looking out at hundreds of people, business owners, community leaders, students, all waiting to hear him. When he began speaking, his voice was calm but full of emotion. "I'm not a man who had it all figured out," he said. "In fact, there was a time when I had nothing. No job, no clear path. Just hope that one day things would get better." He paused. The memory of that morning flashing through his mind. The broken car. The woman stranded on the road. The decision that changed everything. "I once helped a stranger on the road," he continued. "I didn't know who she was. I didn't do it expecting anything in return. I just couldn't walk away. That small act of kindness ended up changing my entire life." The crowd listened in silence. "I lost something that day," he said softly. "An interview I thought was my only chance. But what I gained was much more important, a lesson. That doing the right thing is never a waste of time. Sometimes what feels like a loss is actually the beginning of your greatest blessing." When he finished speaking, the entire room stood and applauded. Some people had tears in their eyes. Others looked inspired, whispering to each other. After the event, people lined up just to shake his hand. Some wanted advice. Others just wanted to thank him for reminding them that kindness still mattered. That night, he sat alone in his small apartment. He could have moved into a bigger place by now, but he didn't see the point. He liked the quiet. He liked remembering where he started. He sat by the window looking out at the city lights and thought about how far he'd come. It still didn't feel real sometimes. Then he thought about the CEO, the woman he had helped that day. She had given him not just a job, but a second chance at life. He decided it was time to show her just how much that meant to him. The next morning, he arrived at work early. He walked straight to her office carrying a small box. When she looked up surprised, he smiled. "What's this?" she asked. He placed the box on her desk. Inside was a framed photo. Not of himself, but of a group of young people from the foundation holding their job offer letters, smiling proudly. Beneath it was a small note that read, "This is what your kindness created." She looked at the photo for a long moment, her eyes softening. This means a lot," she said quietly. He nodded. "You gave me a chance. I just wanted to show you what it became." She smiled warmly. "I'm proud of you. You've done something very few people can. You've turned gratitude into purpose." He smiled back. "And you turned kindness into opportunity." They both laughed softly. For a moment, there was nothing but quiet understanding between them, the kind that didn't need words. Over the next few years, the foundation grew even more. He trained teams to run new centers, traveled to other countries, and worked with organizations that wanted to copy the model he had built. Everywhere he went, he carried the same message. Kindness doesn't cost much, but its value is endless. People started calling him the man who turned one act of help into 1,000. But he always said, "I didn't do it alone. Life helped me, people helped me, and I just kept moving forward." One evening, the company held a large annual event to celebrate their milestones. The hall was filled with employees, partners, and guests. The CEO took the stage first, speaking about the company's journey, its growth, and its future. Then she paused and smiled. "There's someone special I want to recognize tonight," she said. "Someone whose story reminds us all why doing good matters." She looked toward him, sitting in the front row. "Please come up here." He walked to the stage slowly, applause filling the room. She turned to him and said, "When I was stranded on a lonely road years ago, I met a young man who didn't know who I was, didn't ask for anything, but chose to help anyway. That small moment changed both our lives. Today, that same man is one of our company's greatest leaders and the heart behind our foundation." The crowd erupted in cheers. Some stood up clapping loudly. He stood there, humbled, his heart full. He didn't make a speech that night. He didn't have to. His story had already spoken for him. After the event, as people gathered around to congratulate him, he stepped aside for a moment. He looked at the stage, then at the CEO smiling proudly from across the room. It hit him then. Life had come full circle. The same road where he once stood covered in dust helping a stranger had led him here, to a place of purpose, peace, and pride. He realized that success wasn't about money or titles. It was about how many lives you could touch, how many people you could help up along the way. And so, as the night ended, he stepped outside, taking one last look at the city skyline. The air was cool, the stars faint above the lights. He closed his eyes and whispered softly, "Thank you." He didn't need to say more because deep down he knew this truth, that sometimes the smallest good deed can open the biggest door. And when you walk through it with kindness in your heart, life itself finds a way to reward you, not with riches, but with meaning. And that, he thought, was the real success story.